publishing for an audience of one. Okay, when we work in Flash, when you save your Flash document, the extension will have an FLA after it. FLA standing for Flash. So this is my first file, mine, and this one first, bottom. I'm using the camel backing, but I haven't started with a capital F, but I'm using capital F's in here for what might be safe or safer is instead my underscore first underscore file .fli. So you adhere to the naming system right for any files. You can choose.
Okay.
No? Okay. That's okay. I know that if you are, a lot of other people are.
I don't have my glasses, so it's hard for me to see. I'm going to put it on.
Okay. Anyway, when you save that document, it has the extension of FLA. That, similar to what we've done in Photoshop, is your original file. This is not what you publish on the web. When we complete the assignments and you email them to me, this is not what you email me. This is a large, robust file that has, it is fully edited. When you completed or you're ready to publish your file, as opposed to print, they use the term publish it. What you will do is that we'll look in a moment when I give you the tour of Flash. There are any number of file formats you can export to. Flash is pretty nice in that way. You can publish still images, or for the most part, Flash is used to create very smooth vector animation for the web. And that was something that was just unheard of several years ago that we just couldn't do. And that is really what it does best. And now it's turned into those little annoying banner ads that you see on everybody's website. That's what most of it is. A number of years ago, actually just a few years ago, everybody wanted to publish their entire website using Flash. And that's still very doable, but it's become less popular in the past couple of years because most people now are adhering to more use of cascading style sheets in their HTML pages, and instead, sometimes Flash, if you don't have the plugin, it can't be viewed on the browser. So that can still pose a problem. If anybody has an iPhone, for whatever reason, Steve Jobs doesn't want to acknowledge Flash, so you can't see a Flash file on many small handheld phones or that sort of thing. So anyway, when you do publish for the web, the most common file format that you will see will be a .swf. This is the one that you will publish. It stands for Shockwave Flash. So when you publish your file, it will have everything the same here, mine, first, underscore file, only it will have this extension. Okay? Clear to everybody? This is your original. This would be like having a .psd document. This is your Photoshop. And then over here would be the same as saving it as a JPEG or, a GIF. Or your original contains layers, effects, all sorts of things. And then the SWF file would be similar to a file that's specific for publishing on the web. Okay?
What was the name of the SWF?
SWF, Shockwave Flash. It's not that critical. If you were to ask me what JPEG stands for, I can't remember. And everybody, almost every year, somebody asks, and I can never remember what these stand for. They're computer folks who are really crazy about acronyms. So, I love to impress these people. Because Flash is now owned by Adobe, the layout should look similar to other Adobe applications. When we work with Photoshop, you'll see that your tools look very similar to the left. We have the panelists, which add functionality to most of these tools on the right. What is unique that you don't have in other Adobe programs that we do have now, that you will notice in Dreamweaver as well, is something called the properties panel. We'll talk about all these When you open Flash for the first time, you should get a little dialog box like this. It allows you to either open a recent document, create a new document, and this is similar in Photoshop and Illustrator, other Adobe programs, or create a new document from a template. And we can use these this semester. There's no point, I think, in reinventing the wheel. So as long as you know how, I think it's going to be extremely useful. So for example, when I have you design a banner ad, you might want to create one from a template. And you'll notice that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different sizes. These are all standard sizes on the web now. That you'll notice that there are vertical, horizontal. This one in particular, this is the most common one you see at the top. They're all standard sizes. How they, arrived at these sizes, I have no clue. They seem really odd to me. They do. They are all standard sizes. So you can pick from any one of these, and maybe one of the ones that we'll do, since this is the oldest and most traditional, will be 468 by 60, and you click OK, and voila, it opens up a blank page here for us, or a stage, that will allow us now to create a file, animate it, or it could be a still image. It doesn't have to be animated. But that's really I think the strength of Flash, because it is a vector-based or object-oriented program. It can create very smooth animations in here, unlike the animated GIFs that I briefly mentioned in the past week, that work really nice on the web. So go ahead and we'll close this, and we'll create a brand new one. Let's close this file. Just create a brand new file. And I don't want any one of these, I just want a general file. I'm going to use ActionScript 2. Have any of you had programming of any kind? Java? Well, it should be very similar. Java or JavaScript? Java. Okay. ActionScript 3 is new to CS3, and it is entirely different. Almost entirely different. This would be closer probably to what you're accustomed to. But it is all object-based. And because I'm not a programmer, this is still foreign to me. I mean, I can sort of use it, but not as well as I can in ActionScript 2. So I'll adhere to 2 for today. We're not going to do any programming or anything. And typically when you start a blank document, if you don't specify the stage size, this is what we'll get. You'll notice at the top, it's really divided into 2 parts. We have this top part. This is your timeline, and this will be really, really important, so you'll want to keep this up at all times. We can move over between the 2, and you'll notice that when it highlights, you'll notice that I see a double parallel line, horizontal line with the arrows. I can move this up or down, so it'll allow click and drag, which allows you to change this a little bit. On the bottom here, the area in white is my stage size. This is the size that will be published on the web. And I can also see when I click on here, that if I look down at the bottom on my properties panel, that the stage size by default is 550 by 400 pixels. Now that's pretty good size, isn't it? Because what size did I say that will be working on most of the time this year for publishing on web pages? 800 by 600. So 550 is almost a complete width. This would be almost a complete page size. So if you were going to design a website that's done entirely in Flash, this would be pretty close to the size you would probably want to use. It would fit, because when you design a website in Flash, which is something more advanced than what we're going to do, I know that that's for some of you, that would be your goal. That SWF file still has to be contained in an HTML page in order to reside on the web. It doesn't exist on the web by itself, independently of that HTML file. Okay? So you still have that page, and this will be contained within it. Okay, let's start first over here with Flash preferences. It's under the Flash file, and look at preferences here. There's so many things in here that you can customize on the fly. It really will make your head spin. It's more than I want to know, to be quite honest. For example, in the category General, on launch, do you want the welcome screen or no document? And they give you 4 choices just for that. What is really nice, though, here is we have the level of undos. Common to most applications when you hit Command or Apple Z, you can undo and go back steps. By default, you can go back 100 levels. That's a lot. Now we can add to that, but that eats up more memory in the computer, and eventually will bog down and slow down the performance of it. But 100 is the default. That's a lot. I mean, sorry, if you have to go back 100 steps, just start over. Do something. But it is kind of nice to know that you can just keep hitting Command Z, and you'll keep going back, and hopefully you'll reach a point where you haven't messed up. You'll notice that there are a number of other features, including at the bottom, highlight colors, drawing objects. We have all these different colors and that we can change. But if you have color preferences for a number of these things, you can change that. Action script. If you are a programmer and you like to code everything yourself using action script, they even give you a lot of tools in here to customize, from what font is used to display the action script, the size of the font, the color, for the foreground, keywords, comments, strings, all sorts of things. If you want a different color, you can customize all of this stuff. It's very nice. And you'll notice down below here, when you click each one of these, and it's kind of slowing down a little bit. You'll notice by default that if we go down to the clipboard and we have pictures for objects, the resolution is by default 72 pixels per inch, or dots per inch. This is exactly what we need. Text and drawing, all sorts of stuff that we can come in here and change. I don't recommend that you change anything, but it is stuff that you can do. All kinds of things. Very, very nice. These at home might be useful to you, but when you do import Photoshop files, PSD file importer, and AI or Adobe Illustrator importer, that if you do that a lot, that you might want to come in here and customize some of these settings in here for yourself. Here, it's not going to matter. If you customize anything, as soon as you log out and leave, it's going to revert back. I'm just, more than anything, pointing these out. They are here. The next bit of information for us under the file menu that I want us to look at are publish settings. So after you've created a file in Flash and you've saved it as a .fla document, and you're ready to publish it, you can, typically for the web, it doesn't have to be, it could be for CD-ROM, It could be for any number of things. It doesn't have to be for the web. But we'll go to File, and we'll look at Publish Settings. Lots of useful information here, because here it gives us all of the different file formats that we can use to publish. It gives us some other specific information about Flash, and anything pertaining to HTML. So let's start by looking at the formats. By default, it automatically saves or publishes your file as a .sfw or SWF document, which is what you use on the web. And it will also publish at the same time an HTML page with that SWF file in it, if you so choose. You can always turn that on. If you wish to publish still images, it gives you the option of GIF, JPEG, or PNG. And what is really nifty, and where Flash has become a major player, is actually down at the bottom. You can save this as a QuickTime or a movie. And so what a lot of people are doing now, as well as they're exporting their files, and you're using Flash for video on the web, that has become a huge player. When you go to YouTube or any of those things, a lot of those are used now, they're Flash files. These two that I overlooked are really nifty. There are two file formats that you can save or publish your document as. One is a Windows projector, the other is a Macintosh projector. In order to view an SWF file or QuickTime, for example, you need a plugin in order to be able to see this on a browser. The Flash Player for SWF, for QuickTime, or any other kind of movie thing, you need the QuickTime plugin on your browser in order to load it in your browser in order to view it. If you have an interactive book, or you have an interactive portfolio, for example, that you would like to give someone that you don't necessarily want to publish on the web, if you publish them both as a Windows projector and as a Macintosh projector, you can burn these on a CD, as an example, or save it on a flash drive, hand it to someone. They do not need Flash, they do not need a browser, they do not need anything but a computer to go in and double click on that projector, and they will be able to see it in its entirety. It is really very nice. Right, so you don't need any plugins, you don't need any browsers, you don't need any applications, because what these are fundamentally are self-contained applications. That when you double click on it, it launches it, depending on whether you're on Windows or a Macintosh platform, and you can do it in its entirety. It really works very nice.
You have to check them when you do it?
Right. These are unchecked, so when I publish this, it will not publish these. If you do want any of these published, then you just check them. Now, most of the time in this class, we're just going to work with the SWF files. But for any reason, when we do your interactive piece at the very end, and you want to publish it for a projector, Windows, or Macintosh, you might get, it won't be required to appear for yourself.
So if you were to use, say, JPEGs or GIFs within your file, you don't have to check.
You don't have to check. Doesn't matter. In fact, you can import directly now Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator files. But once they're in there, you don't have to worry about it, because once you publish it, it automatically converts them all to JPEGs anyway.
So what's the drawback of not checking?
Of not checking, this just means if you want to take a still image from your file and publish it. The Flash is animated. QuickTime is animated, and it's assuming in the projector that these are animated. These files are not animated. You can have an animated GIF, but that's not what it's going to do. It will publish still images of your file if you do this. So if you just want, for whatever reason, you created a document in Flash, and you decided in that document you want a still image that you're going to publish on your website as a still image. You can select PNG, JPEG, or GIF, select that, and when it publishes it, it will take a still, out of 100 frames, you'll take one frame and it will publish just that, and that's it. Does that make sense? No. Because when you have animation, you're going to have multiple frames. For still images, you only have one frame, one still image. And that's what these file formats represent, although I did say that with GIF you can have animations. But I don't want to go there because they really are kind of clunky, although you still see them from time to time. Does that make sense or not? You don't need...
I mean, I just wanted to know, like, in what instance would you, for example, what instance would you check on? What instance would you wouldn't?
Only, okay, let me open a file and show you. So let me go ahead and select one as a JPEG. And I will also maybe use a Macintosh projector. And click OK. And now let me go ahead and open a file. I hope that I have a file built in here that is something that we can use. How about my slideshow? I don't know if I have anything in here that's worthwhile, but I will open it in. Okay, so here's my slideshow. And those little slides. Now, if I just leave this like this, this is a Flash file with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers, and it's comprised of 5 frames. If I want to see how this slideshow works, I have to go to, one of the ways of doing it is to go to Control and to select Test Movie. Because I can't just play it from here, unfortunately. You have to publish it first. I can also go to File and select Publish, and that will allow me to preview. But when I select Publish, it will publish all of those files that I checked. And I don't necessarily want to do that right now. I just want to see the SWF file. So I'm going to go to Control, select Test Movie. It's already been saved, so it's going to publish this. And this is what it would look like on a web browser. This is the size. So when I click, it will begin to play. And it plays it automatically. It will hold for 5 seconds, and it will play the next one. That's actually, that was still, I want autoplay. Why don't you autoplay? Move back up. Autoplay. There we go. 5 seconds, and it seems like a long time. So, if, provided everything is working, I can manually click through these, and I have my slideshow. I'm happy with it. It looks the way I want. I'm ready to go. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and save this on the desktop, so let's see what happens with all of these. And I should probably put them in a folder so you can see what happens as well. So we'll do new folder, and we'll call it Flash Test. We'll go back to Flash. And now, since I previewed it and tested it here under the control menu, I'm ready to publish it. So first I need to save the file, save as, and it's already saved. But one of the things that you'll discover quickly that in order to publish anything in Flash, it has to be saved to a drive that's writable. So if you try to just open a file directly from the CD-ROM from your book, and try to publish it or play it, it won't, because it's going to try to write to that CD-ROM, which is not, it's only read-only. So you'll have to make a copy of the file and put it on your Flash drive and on the hard drive. So I'll go to desktop, which is where I saved it, and save Flash test files. On my slideshow, save it there. So now when I publish anything, it will automatically add those files to that folder, wherever the original is saved. Now I can go to File, Publish, boom. And it's that quick. Now we can hide this. Go in here. And here are all the files there. So here's my original. Here's my HTML, and here's the SWF. Now something happened here because for this file I didn't change the settings. Not thinking. So let me go back. Let me go to File and Publish Settings. Wait a minute. Let's go back to Formats. Notice that for that individual, it's changed for individual files, and I forgot to change it. So we'll say okay, and we'll say we're going to go ahead and publish these projectors as well. Now we'll go ahead and from here I can publish as well. So I'll go ahead and publish the file. Now let's go back. Let's say okay. And we'll hide this, and we'll come back in here. And now notice all the additional files in here. My slideshow is the self-running file that we use for Macintosh. My slideshow exec would be the self-running file you would use on a PC. This is my original Flash document. It would have my library, it would have all of my timeline, everything built into that you just saw. Here's an HTML page that I can open. Double click on this and it will automatically launch it in a browser so I can see what it's going to look like. Here's the JPEG, and that's, if we look at this, watch this, I'll open this in Photoshop. It's just a still of that first frame, and that's it. So for some reason I wanted to maybe create a still of that first frame to use as a thumbnail for a button to actually launch and play that. That might be one reason you would do that. So this is just a still of that first page. Nothing more, nothing less. That's all JPEG, GIF, or PNG. And again, here is the SWF file. This is the one that you publish. If you want, it's already inside the HTML. So if I double click on HTML, this will launch the browser, and it puts it inside this. You can see inside a browser how this looks. Because all SWF files have to be inside an HTML page on the web. That's on the web. On your computer, you just need Flash Player. You don't need a browser per se.
So when you upload it to the server, it's the HTML file that you want to.
Correct. And you'll see when we get to Dreamweaver that all other files, whether they be still images or they be animated, Flash files, or they be whatever, are typically linked to those pages. So there are settings in Dreamweaver that will automatically upload those additional files as well. If you're not careful, they won't, and that's when you get the broken links. Have you ever opened a web page and you see a little icon, an image that indicates that this is where something should be, and you get this little broken, looks like a broken page or a broken item? That means that there's a broken link. It knows that something is supposed to be there, but it cannot find the original file to place inside the page. That's why when we get to the Dreamweaver part of this, actually starting now, organizing all of your files will be really, really important. And that can be a nightmare. Because Flash is self-contained, which is nice, so it's like Photoshop. But the images or the SWF files that you create with Flash will become a part of something else, like an HTML page that you generate in Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver HTML pages, with the exception of the text, nothing else is embedded in them. All the other files are just linked, which means that those files are external to that page, and the link is looking for it in a particular folder or location relative to that file, and when it finds it, then it will load it in the page. If it can't find it, then you get the broken link. Does that sort of make sense? If it doesn't, that's okay. I know it's very abstract now because we're not doing it.
My question is though, if you're saving it for the projectors,
Uh-huh.
and for both the PC and Mac. If you're on the web page on it, will it, because that's not under SWF?
Right, these projectors would not be used for the web.
Oh,
These would be used if you plan on burning them on a CD or putting them on a flash drive or something like that, and actually physically handing them to somebody.
Can they also work as email attachments?
You can, yeah. You can also attach an SWF file because that will be smaller probably and more compressed. The only thing that will determine whether or not the end user can do it is if they have Flash Player in their browser. Most do early on in early years of Flash. You had to manually install Flash Player in your browser in order to view it, and so that was the downside of that. There are other downsides too using Flash, is that many parts of it cannot be, as it were, cannot be read by people with, for example, seeing or who are sight impaired. They haven't made improvements on that, so people with disabilities, oftentimes in Flash, still have limited access. And that's also probably one of the reasons a lot of websites are minimizing the use of it, except for banner. So, do these answer everybody's questions now? Why you would want these different file formats? It depends on what you're going to do with the file, fundamentally. If it's going to be for the web, you're probably going to use the SWF file. You're going to embed that in the HTML page. And you can see that we already have one here. Test it to make sure that it works properly. If you just simply need a still image that maybe you will use as a button that will link to your SWF file, that would be a pretty good idea too. You just want a still image from your Flash project. If you want self-running files independent of Flash plugins and that sort of thing, then you would use the projectors. And they can be very nice for presentations. When you go in and you're going to present, you're in a boardroom, they may or may not have a connection to the internet. And you don't know how reliable their connection is or how fast it is. So maybe you would be better off, creating a projector that you can play, not having to worry about mess ups. And when you're done, if you feel comfortable giving the client a copy of it, you can give it to them. You don't have to worry about, do they have Flash on their computer? Do they have plugins? Do they have this? Do they have that? It just plays automatically. It's excellent for those sorts of things. The books, little slideshows. It could be your portfolio. It could be any number of things you want to share with them. It really works very, very well. And notice that all of these were published automatically where my original FLA file was. And similar to when we were saving for the web in Photoshop, that should work this way is that you'll notice that the only thing that I need to worry about now by properly naming my files is that when it publishes all of these other formats, all it does is it changes the extension. And they all reside next to one another very nicely, so I can pick and choose. I don't know, it's on your shelf in your kitchen. You have 5 different cereals that you like. One family member likes Cheerios, and another one likes Muse, and another one likes whatever. Well, you have all of those to choose from, and you pick and choose whenever you like. They're right there. You don't have to look in different places. So, that was found under published settings. There are some other nice settings in here too. If we go to Flash, this is the one people use the most over here. And what you will notice that oftentimes when you try to download somebody else's Flash project from the internet, You say, this is really neat, I would like to copy it. And it protects you from doing that. That's what this little checkbox does. Protect from import. So even if you do publish a still image, it's an SWF file, and put that on your HTML page, you can protect that from people importing, if that's really important to you. So if you say that this is my image, I don't want anyone else to touch it or have it or use it or do anything with it without my permission, you can protect it. You can also specify if someone is going to view it, do they need to put in a password? So maybe you have a page for clients and only people, paying customers or certain people, do you want to see this? You can specify a password. There are just so many settings here for audio because it's very easy to add audio to Flash, and it does an excellent job. And you bring in on a Macintosh an AIF file as opposed to a WAV file you would on a PC. When it exports, it automatically exports your file with the sound as MP3 file formats. So it works really, really nice. And at other times, you might want to generate size reports and all sorts of things that you can do. Lots and lots of ways of customizing this under published settings. With me so far? Let's go around the horn here then and talk about each of these panels that you see to the left, to the right, and you can have variations of this, but you should have your toolbox up here at all times. That's what this is to the left. If you've worked with Illustrator or Photoshop, it should look very similar. You notice that you can, if you want it in 2 columns or 1 column, it's fine. If you want to actually pull this off from the edge, you click on the flash, and you can move this wherever you want on your stage. It can be wherever you like. But these are all of your basic drawing tools. Now, for the most part, we're going to spend some time showing you how to use the drawing tools, and they are pretty neat. But to be quite honest, if you have experience using Photoshop or Illustrator, you will probably want to prepare all of your files there and import them into Flash. You'll have better controls and better tools at your fingertips there to create the desired kind of image that you want. This does a pretty good job, but not as good, I think, as Illustrator. And definitely not as good as Photoshop. So, but there are a number of tools that you can use. Your text tool will be useful, but if there's a specific font you want and look or technique, you might want to do it in Illustrator and record it and bring that over. The panels to the right add functionality to typically what you see here. They also give you added information. When you open up the file, what we should do is go to on every program it's in a slightly different place. You know, I knew it was under Window, and because in Photoshop I was expecting it to be up here, and it's not. It's down here. It's under Workspace. I can go back to the default Workspace, and this is how it should look by default. We have our color panel here, we have swatches, and we have our library, and obviously there's nothing in our library at the moment. And later on you'll discover that as you create items, and you convert them to symbols, you can create a library of elements that you will use in your file. We can also go down to Workspace and use icons and text default. So there's a number of different default choices, and it's just a matter of preference. You know, how do you like to organize your desktop? You'll notice here we also have, it actually gives us more real estate by doing it this way. We still have our color panel, we have our swatches, we have history, we have our align tool, which is a very important tool in here. It's also available in Photoshop and Illustrator. Our info panel, transform, our library, just as we had before. You click and click again and it closes it. We can also go under Window, Workspace, and we can use icons only default. And then if you want, you can create your own custom workspace, which you can do in Illustrator and in Photoshop as well. So if I decide, for example, I like having my color panel up at all times, and I can click and drag and pull that off. So maybe I want it over here. And I like to also see swatches, and I want them separate as well. So these are now separate from one another. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Pull that off. Maybe I want these two here. Also, maybe I like having my transform panel over here. I don't know, I'm going to make a thorough mess of this just to show you what you can do. I like having this up here. I mean, from my personal taste, it works really nice. I'm happy with that. So every time I open up Flash at home, I want my desktop, my workspace to look like this. Well, I can go to Window, Workspace, and I can select Save Current. And we can do this, as I said, in Photoshop and in Flash, and in Workspace. And now I can go to Window, and I can go back to Workspace, and go back to Icons and Text Default. It takes it back, and that's what it will be officially when you come back up here. But then at home, when you work, you can go back to Workspace, and I can select Workspace, and it takes me back to the what I had before. So you can customize these most of this program in any number of ways. We can even get to, let me go back to, I like the first one actually, Workspace, icons and default text. This is the one I like the best actually. I have to think for a moment. Hold on here. I think it's under preferences. Let's go here for a minute. And I want to go, oh shoot, I can't remember myself. I can't remember. What is it? Keyboard shortcuts. Used to be, I thought, someplace else. We can go to keyboard shortcuts. You can even customize these. So if you're planning on being a power user, what we can do, you'll notice that it has, by default, 5 different options. That if you are a Photoshop 6 user, now they intentionally give you an old version of Photoshop, not CS3. Why they do that, I don't know. Maybe they haven't updated it yet because now it is owned by Adobe. But if you're a power user in Photoshop and you're used to the Photoshop key commands, by selecting that, anything that you do in Photoshop will be the same in here. You won't have to remember multiple key commands. And you can also create your own custom shortcuts in here too. As long as it isn't used by another one, by some other tool, you can create your own custom shortcuts. So you can see these are just categories. There are just tons and tons of ways of customizing this. So in addition to our tools, for example, if I want to use a brush tool, and by default, let me pull this off, see what this is. I have the brush tool selected, Get the fill by default with black. I can either change the color here, like so, and then click. I can select any number of colors, and these are all the web-safe colors. Or with the brush selected, I can also come over to swatches. I can select from here, which is the same as I would see over here. So I can select another color, I might do. Notice it updates over here. So what these panels over here do oftentimes add functionality to what you see over here. If I use the type tool, for example, and I have multiple lines of type and I want to or objects that I want to align, I have these. I also have the transform tool that allows me to change objects very quickly and accurately. Again, they all add functionality, and some you use more than others. Actions is really a separate program built in here. It's not just a little panel that adds functionality. This is the nuts and bolts of the program. If you are a programmer and you know JavaScript, I think Java, I'm not sure, but it's object-based, so that's about as much as I know. That you can come in here and you can program everything from here. It really do a separate class to fix this. In addition to the panels to the right, whoops, we have the properties panel along the bottom. And this, I encourage you to keep up at all times. This gives us a lot of information about any tool or object, or just about anything that we have selected at the moment. Because I have the brush tool selected, it tells me that I have the brush tool selected. It tells me the color of the fill, and it tells me the smoothing properties. If I select the text tool instead, notice that right now, it tells me that if I choose to create some text right now, it's static text. It gives me the font, it gives me the kerning, it gives me the color of the text, it tells me whether it's bold or italic or that it's centered. It gives me a lot of information about it. So any tool you have selected, or if I have an object selected. So if I come over here, let's make a little rectangle here. Okay. Notice that with this selected, it tells me that I have a drawing object selected. It tells me what this is, and this will become really critical too. This is typically where things get confusing when we talk about drawing objects and groups and symbols, and there are different kinds of symbols, and they essentially look the same, but their behaviors are very different. But it tells me the width and the height, it gives me the X and the Y coordinate of this. It tells me the outline stroke and the width. It gives me the fill color, and the fill color for the stroke, in fact, is a solid line. It gives me all sorts of information about this object that I can now change by using this. It's really, really very nice and very powerful. So I would keep this up at all times. Yes?
Does it do layers like Photoshop?
Yes, but and you will want to use layers. If you don't use layers much in Photoshop, you will want to use layers in Cube, especially when we get to animation, which is a fundamental part of this, is that you want to realize that each animated object, if you have multiple things happening at the same time at a given point in time, each of those typically will reside on a separate layer. There are, not in every instance, but many times when you do that.
How do you bring that up on the right side like you do in Photoshop?
Oh, I'm sorry. You will not see layers here. You see it in the timeline. That's where you will see it. That's the last and probably most important thing that I need to talk about that I haven't talked about yet. I've kind of gone around, and now I'm going to focus in on the center, and we'll see. Okay. So I would leave most of the panels up. You can eliminate some if you want, and you'll discover in time which panels you use more than others. Tools, leave up at all times, and definitely leave the properties panel up at all times. Because even if I click on the background, look at what it tells me. It tells me the size of my stage. It tells me that I can click from here, publish settings. It gives me my background color, it gives me my frame rate. It tells me that I'm working in ActionScript 2. It gives me a lot of information about my file without having to go anywhere else. A lot of information. Okay, so now we come to the timeline and the stage. Let me go to the stage first, and then we'll talk about the timeline. The stage, you'll notice that we see the white area and the gray area surrounding it. The white area is the area that's published, the part that you actually see. I can take this element and I can put it over here, and when I publish it, I will only see the part that lies within the white area. But why is that important to have the gray area? Because oftentimes, think of this not so much as a still, because we're going to be animating, a still image. Think of it in terms of theater, or think in terms of film. In theater, you'll have stage left and stage right. You have your cast members standing in the wings. Well, that's what you can have here. You can have elements off to the side, and then at a given point in time, they will come on and enter. So that's what you're doing there. You're having them off stage, and then at a point in time, they'll enter, and then they can exit. Top, bottom, left, right. You can only have one background color for a project. And so that by default, the current background color of my stage is white. If I choose to use a different background color, it will be that background for every frame and every scene and anything that I do in this project.
Well, I was wondering if you, let's say you have two scenes on the animation, and one you want it with the white background and the other.
Can't do it. What you have to do then is maybe take a rectangle and stretch it over the stage and create the illusion that it's a different background.
All right.
But to change the background color, I can click from here and I can pick from any one of these. And it changes it, but we'll change it for any other scene. For example, the other thing too is that you can only have one frame rate for any project. By default in here it's set to 12 frames per second. What we will probably do is use 20 frames per second. Why 20? I'm not the one who determined that. It's from me learning the program myself, and it's learning from others. I can tell you this, that for video, for broadcast video, it's 30 frames per second. When you actually broadcast it over the airwaves, in order to sync the mouth movements with the sound, it's 29.7 or something for those. With that. For film, it's 24 frames per second. For European video, it's 25 frames per second. In the old days, when computers weren't terribly fast, and it took a lot of processing to keep, to really play these things in the time that you had specified, because this will drop frames. It will only try to play them at 20 frames per second, but if the end user's computer is really old and has a very slow processor, it will attempt to play it at 24, 30, whatever frames per second you specify. If it can't, then it starts to drop frames and it slows down. So in the old days, for CD-ROMs, maybe 15 frames per second, and for the web, 12 frames per second. Now 20 frames sounds good because mostly it's close to film, and more importantly, it's easy to figure out on your timeline. If I want something 1 second long, all I have to do is look up here and look at 20, and that's it. If I say it's 12, I go, oh, 10 plus 1, 2. Well, that took longer than just looking and saying 20.
So for the FPS, but when per second, it's like for every second, it's rendering 20 frames.
Correct. Everybody hear that? The frame rate, FTP, frames per second. So for every second of a project you have, or animation that you have, this would be playing 12 frames. 1 through 12. So for every second, it's going to try to play that.
You said what the default rule is 20?
Correct.
What'd you say?
20. So you just highlight that. Now, unfortunately, I'm running out of tape, so I'm going to have to continue this, review some of this again next Tuesday, but that's okay. They have it on video. Of course, since I'm the only one who's watching them, I guess I won't. There are other places we can go to change the frame rate. We can go to modify document, and modify tab here. And it will have many of the same things that you see down here. We can change the stage size, we can change the frame rate, we can change the background color. Oftentimes what you want to do at home though, if you have this, is that if you're working and you work frequently at a particular dimension of the stage or frame rate, you're going to click here and select Make Default. And every time you open Flash, it will have those settings. And you can always change them. I can always change the stage size later on too, but that can cause huge problems. You know, after having staged animations and your timing and where things are moved and you change the page size, it screws everything up. So you really need to plan that in advance and be pretty close to what you would do if you were to print. That if you're going to print for 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, you don't decide afterwards, or really what I want to do is do one that's 8.5 by 14. So I'll make it bigger. You can do that, but it really screws everything up. Okay? Let me turn that off and I'll keep up on this.
What was document properties under what?
Under modify. Command J.